Welcome to the Virginia Carolina Deer Tracts podcast. I'm Mike Davis, and I am here to talk about everything hunting, hunting land, and the great outdoors in both Virginia and North Carolina. Thanks for tuning in. All right, everybody. Man, welcome back to another edition of the Virginia Carolina Deer Tracts podcast. And boy, do we have a good one for you today. I am joined by Mr. Tyler Jordan, a man that really needs no introduction. If you are listening to this podcast and you don't know who Mr. Jordan is, I encourage you to go back and listen to a few more of our episodes. But welcome to the show, Tyler. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad we can line it up. I
Yeah,
appreciate you having me on today.
yeah, absolutely. I feel very blessed. The connection between me and the Jordans, as it were, is really a connection between UC Hunting Properties and Realtree. They've been partnered for years, and it's certainly a partnership that I am and we are collectively very proud to be a part of. So looking forward to keeping that going in the future, and love where it's gone so far.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's been a great relationship for several years now. And, unfortunately, I couldn't make it out there to Kansas City with you guys here recently, but, I'm glad that this partnership is going to be extended for a long time.
Yeah.
And, it's been a great avenue for us. I know I haven't myself, but David and some of our pro staff guys have hunted with some of the UC property real estate guys, and just showcasing some of these properties that y'all are selling. A lot of these good recreational properties for turkey, deer, some big game. So it's been a great relationship, and looking forward to the future.
Well, it's a match made in heaven. It really is, at least from our end. But speaking of hunting, I mean, here we are in the middle of May, so turkey season is wrapping up.
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe not so sadly, depending on how your season's gone. But how's your season been so far?
It's been good. I say it's been good. The Georgia season honestly got off to a little bit of a slow start for us here. I would say that second week of the season was kind of prime for us. I would say that the turkey hunting was probably peaked that second week of April. Opens April 1st. It's been pushed back. When I was younger, I think it opened up that third weekend in March, but now seems like it keeps getting pushed back in a lot of places. I did kill, it was a 3-bird limit for the last few years. It's been 2 birds. I did take my second turkey. I think it's been about a week and a half ago now here. But I would say it's been a little bit of a struggle. It's not that we have a lot of turkeys here in Georgia. We've been really blessed, do a lot of trapping, just good land management. But just we're seeing turkeys, but there just haven't been. I'm thinking maybe some of that warm weather that we had in February, March. Maybe they were already kind of at their peak, at the end of March, and we kind of missed that prime time. So, and I've talked to several people. It seems like that's how a lot of the state of Georgia has gone. Even Alabama's been the same way. But I went over to Alabama with one of my buddies, Riley Green. Went over there with Lee Ellis from Seek One. I'm sure some people have seen Seek One and seen some of the big deer Lee has killed. But killed a turkey over there. Trying to see where else. I went to Virginia. Struck out in Virginia. That's the only place that I struck out. Had a really good time hunting with bear, though. The sweepstakes winner that we had for, the UC hunting deal up there turned out to be awesome. He killed a turkey on the very last day.
Cool.
But we came close several times. It's not that we didn't have chances, just didn't work out for whatever reason, but hopefully going to go back up there next year. I think where Georgia was maybe a little bit, past its peak, it seemed like the Virginia hunting was maybe a little early. The turkey still kind of flocked up and, weren't gobbling like crazy, but we came close. Just seems like every 50-50 call we made, it was just the wrong way, but just part of it. Pennsylvania, just got back from there last week, killed 2 turkeys up there. Beautiful country, kind of like Virginia. Some of the prettiest woods that I've ever seen and hunted in before. First time to Virginia and Pennsylvania, so
Awesome.
was glad to knock both those off the list. And I think that's it. I hunted Mississippi some. Mississippi was a little bit of a struggle. Hunted there, I think, for 4 days, but all in all, can't complain. Had a really good time. We had some guests come in here at the farm too that had some success. So all in all, a good season. And then I'm going to Mexico for the first time on Monday next week.
Awesome.
So David Blanton and I are going up there for about a week and for the Goulds and excited about that. But we got a big group going, so hopefully it'll be a fun week.
Nice. Well, it sounds like you've certainly had a busy season, and man, I'm so proud and excited to hear that you came into Virginia. We always talk about, we feel like we're left out in the national map kind of thing in the hunting world, and so it you know does us some good to hear you've been in the area, man. We're super excited about that, and look forward to having you back anytime, anytime.
Yeah, enjoyed it. No, Bear, I mean, obviously think the world of Bear and, become closer friends with him the last couple of years, but just some of the prettiest country, just kind of rolling hills and big, beautiful green fields. And it seemed like just about every other field that we drove by, we were seeing turkeys, even turkeys we couldn't hunt, but just some of the prettiest ground I've ever hunted. But no, excited to go back. My wife and I actually talked about trying to make it a family deal next year and going
Cool.
out there for the opener again for 3 or 4 days. So
Awesome. Awesome.
hopefully we can have some better luck next time.
Yeah, I hope so. Me too, by the way. Um, I did want to get into the Realtree stuff a little bit,
Yeah.
or probably a lot, really. I guess it goes without saying. I don't really need to rehash the proud history of Realtree, and everything that your father has done. But when did you know that you wanted to carry on that legacy?
Uh, you know, man, I don't know if I ever really thought about doing anything different. And to me, it just, we've been really lucky, like where this doesn't feel like a job a whole lot, just I think I knew at a really young age, probably 12, 13 years old, that I was ate up with hunting, love deer hunting, turkey hunting being probably my favorite. I think a lot of people associate Realtree being a deer hunting company primarily, but if I had to choose, one over the other, if somebody was just like, you have to choose this, I love spring turkey hunting. And to me, there's just nothing better. But, deer hunting's great too. But, I think that I knew at a young age, like it was never a question for me. I never really entertained going into any other industry. This was always it kind of like a second home here at the office. We've been in the same office building. It's only about 15 minutes from my house in Columbus, but Dad's been in here since the very beginning, pretty much. And so this always felt like a second family in a way. And just love the people that you get to work with every single day.
Yeah.
There's been kind of a new influx of employees here, just with some of Dad's group that he came up with that have kind of aged out and retired, and um, it's been fun. Like John Clay, who works on the Realtree United Country Hunting account. He's been a great account manager and good leader in that department, and I think our building just for that next generation, hopefully for those next 20, 30 years, we have a really good team in place that's going to be a good future, I hope. But yeah, I mean, I would say it's always kind of been in my blood.
Yeah.
I've always just
Yeah.
really enjoyed this place. And, Dad's passion has been kind of the camo pattern design and, piecing some of that together. And I would say that some of my passion's the same way. I really love the camo patterns, coming up with one. We're always working on something here, but, even as of late, some of the patterns that are becoming a little bit more popular are some of the vintage heritage patterns, which has been kind of fun for me because a lot of those patterns I grew up with, shot my first deer, my first turkey in Advantage Classic. And to kind of see that pattern come back to light and, people starting to buy that pattern again. We've had some licensees that have requested to put it on their product, which is pretty cool. Um, but yeah, it's all in all, it's a fun place to work, and I'm happy to be here, and hopefully it'll be another 20, 30 years, and we can keep this thing rolling.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you about the creative end of it a little bit. I mean, obviously, your dad started with the camo design and all of that, but how involved are you in creating the newer designs?
Yeah, I would say a decent amount. I luckily get to spend a lot of time with my dad in the woods, and so we're constantly, whether it be taking pictures of certain things, of certain elements he's seen. Now I kind of know like what his eye likes about a
Yeah.
certain pattern, and I get to understand that better. So I tend to look for that in myself as well when we're developing a new pattern. Um, a lot of people don't know this, and it's not a huge deal, but the Max 7 pattern, the waterfowl pattern that we have, the background of that pattern is actually from a picture that I took in Mississippi.
No kidding.
I went to a flooded field and um, took a few different pictures, but that background is actually stems from some pictures that I took. I just saw it and was like, man, this would be a great background of a camo pattern. Not thinking, and there's a lot of times you have good ideas like that and it doesn't work. But that was just something I saw and I was like, man, that I feel like that could be something. And so we kind of piece that into the background of what is Max 7. But APX kind of being the same way. Some of those elements that are in those patterns, some of the branches and leaves from those are pictures that we took on Realtree Farms here in Georgia, where you came in September.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
that's pretty neat because I don't know if that kind of thing, if the creativity, I don't know if that's the kind of thing that can really be passed down through genetics. It's kind of either you have it or you don't.
yeah,
And just probably a very oversimplified way of thinking about this, but if you gave me a blank piece of paper and said, "Hey, okay, draw, uh, some Realtree edge," and I
yeah,
had a pattern in front of me, I could do a very, very good job of copying it. But if you gave me a blank piece of paper and said, come up with a camo pattern, I would stare at that sheet for days and not be able to do anything. I don't feel like I have that creative mindset.
yeah. And I would say, for dad too, which is something I've definitely learned is he's never satisfied. And I think that's in the pursuit of chasing the perfect camo pattern, but it's also in this business. But on the camo side, man, it just, people always ask, man, why would you do another pattern? Even after extra, after edge, why does there need to be another one? But dad just he's never content with what is out there right now. He always feels like he can tweak it and make it a little bit better where it works in more environments. And that's something that I've really enjoyed seeing his process of kind of chasing perfection a little bit.
Yeah.
And like we're working right now, it'll probably be years before we ever release it. But some of these patterns like the APX and the edges that, are of more colors in those patterns. Those sometimes take from start to finish, not so much on the design, but as far as getting all the fabric and the substrates done and testing it, and he likes to test it in the tree, different times of day on the ground floor. Sometimes it takes 3 to 5 years from start to finish on a pattern. And so I think people don't realize, when they see the finished product, you're like, okay, that was just done all digital, put it together. How long can
Yeah.
that really take? But really, there's a very thoughtful process that he goes through, and he's real methodical and trying to get it to look as best as it can be. And I think that's why he's been very successful, and the company's been successful for the longest time because he wants it to be just perfect before it hits the shelf.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of get that, what little time I've spent around him. You certainly get that vibe from him. And it's not an overbearing kind of thing. It's just he has a very clear understanding and vision of what he wants and how to get it there. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I would say, and there's been several times that, and this is where I've just learned from him, where I think we're 90% done, and then we'll go back to being 60% done, and we're kind of starting over. He just, we end up going out there and testing it, not liking it 100% in a certain setting, and so he's wanting to go back and tweak it even more. But I feel like, the consumer may not really know it, but I think that's why the consumer for a long time has trusted Realtree, is just knowing that, they're going to do their best part in trying to get this right for me when I go in the woods, that I have just the confidence that it's going to work no matter where I'm hunting, whether it's for turkey or whitetail or big
Yeah.
game.
Excellent. So I'm gonna back you up a little bit to your childhood.
Yeah.
And I know this is one of those questions you've been asked a million times,
Yeah.
but man, what was it like to just grow up in that environment and be around basically all of the godfathers of the hunting industry? What was that like?
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely been asked that before. And like, I think the best, I don't even know if I realized I kind of thought that every kid,
Yeah,
could
right.
experience, what I experienced just because it was just kind of nonchalant for a while. Obviously got to be around a lot of really cool and interesting people, whether it be inside the hunting community, outside the hunting community, going to a NASCAR track and walking around with Dale Earnhardt, in the middle of the infield. But I had no idea. I mean, I just thought this was kind of normal, right? And it really didn't hit me until I was probably 10 or 11, like, okay, this is not something that just everybody, gets to go do. But, I've, along with my dad, being around David, a lot of really good hunting influences, Michael Waddell being another one, just a lot of really good personalities and a lot of people that I feel like kind of helped me grow up a lot quicker in this industry, just a
Yeah.
lot of good role models to look up to. So, um, it's been when you really think about it now, just a kind of a crazy ride about just all the people that we've touched inside the industry, from the hunting influencers to whether it be baseball players like a Chipper Jones or a Jeff Foxworthy, coming up and, being around for some of those people at a young age. But I think what it's taught me probably more than anything is just how we're all just alike. How really, if it doesn't matter if you're a Jeff Foxworthy or a Chipper Jones or a Brett Favre, that we all have a lot more in common than we do not. Just because these people may hit a baseball better, they may throw a football further than we can. I think that common interest that's brought us all together is just the outdoors and just how much you enjoy it. But um, yeah, it's been a fun experience and a cool ride up to this point.
Well, do you ever stop and think that, now at this point in your life and your career that like, hey, man, I've made it. I've done it. I'm no longer the kid running around with these people. You know, I,
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
at,
know. Yeah, I don't know if I ever really think about it like that. You know, I'm just kind of just take it day by day and, just don't take anything for granted and just try to learn as much from some of these people that as I can still. I mean, I'm 33 now, but just trying to soak up as much knowledge, whether it be about business or whether it be about hunting, tactics, how to better yourself. Especially in the business world, have got to meet a lot of really good people in business. And so I think just trying to use those people to try to make myself better and continue to learn every day. I certainly don't feel like I've gotten to a point where I'm like, man, I've made it very content and comfortable. I mean, I'm still, still constantly learning every time I come to this office every day. I mean, I feel like I have something to learn,
yeah,
whenever I step foot in here. So, I think that's important to have for myself.
yeah. Now, you know, most of us, hunting and the outdoors is our passion, but it's not our job. It's what we do as our hobby outside of work, although in my case there's a lot of overlap. But, in your case, do you ever get burned out? Do you ever need to like take a break and be like, I need to step away from this for a little while. I'm kind of losing my edge.
I don't know if, burnout. So I have a daughter now that's 14 months. And so I have another baby that's on the way that'll be here due in November. But I
Congratulations.
think thank you. Thank you. It's been awesome. And that's been the only time in my life where I'm like, I feel a little bit burned out, whether it be on that moose hunt was a once in a lifetime experience. But whether I'm like in Kansas or Louisiana and I'm there for 10 days to 14 days and that's the only time where I'm like, man, Like I've had a ball, but I would rather be home with my family right now.
Right.
I think that's just kind of normal. I didn't know I'd feel that way as strongly as I did until now, until you actually have a baby. But and not even just on that side of it, but I would say even just for the business side. I really enjoy being outdoors and, hunting and doing all that. But I love the competitive nature of being inside this building every day as well and learning that side of it. And I think just trying to narrow down some of the trips that I take. I mean, my dad, when he was 35, 40 years old, he was staying gone all the time. And, he just kind of always told me. And, I kind of remember it at a young age, like him spending 200 plus days a year on the road while he was trying to grow this business. And he
Wow.
just encouraged me, like, don't do what I did if you can help it.
Yeah.
If you can stay home with your family as much, you will not regret it. And, he's definitely made up for all that lost time, ever since, dad, I think even up until I was maybe 11 or 12 years old doing travel ball and, some football. Your dad was trying to grow the business. And I think that just kind of taught me like try to be home as much as possible. And especially with those younger years when you have kids,
Yeah.
it's time you can't get back.
Yeah. I think everybody wants that rock star lifestyle, but I don't think most people really understand the amount of sacrifice and things that you have to give up to really live it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it's, and I definitely don't want it to ever sound like I'm complaining at all because I mean I love what I get to do and the people that you get to meet and places you get to go because I mean I know a lot of people would love to be in that position and it is a lot of fun. But there are times when you're on the road for that long and sometimes you come home for especially before kids, I come home just for a couple of days just to really do laundry, get packed up and hit the road again. Uh, it becomes a little exhausting. You
yeah,
just kind of that constant on the go and kind of not just having that stability of just being in one place for a long period of time.
yeah, I understand that. The well, speaking of the hunts and places that you go, I'm curious as to how you decide or y'all decide as a company even where you're going to hunt each year, for the shows and stuff. How do you decide where you're going to go? How do you decide what shows these hunts are going to be on? Because you're kind of you're spreading a lot of different directions. So do you really have that kind of laid out game plan going into the season, or is you just kind of once things unfold, you can make decisions depending on people's successes, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I've kind of narrowed down at least my schedule a little bit. Like occasionally will draw like an elk tag, and so obviously we'll make an exception or an adjustment in my schedule there and try to go on that hunt. Nebraska has been somewhere we go the opening week every year in September. It opens September 1st, I believe, just about every season. So we try to go out there that first week and make it an annual event. We've done that for the last, I think, 5 years. Kansas, I know now Kansas is kind of 50-50 on whether you get drawn or not, but that becomes kind of a annual staple if we get drawn. Um, and then Louisiana, we've had a lease there for the last 5 years. And so that becomes a place that we go to 3 to 5 times a season. And Kansas can be the same way, Nebraska as well. But I would say that we do try to hit those same spots around a certain time, around a certain time frame. But we'll we will leave some room in there for adjust just with weather or whatever the case may be. So that between those, I don't really get too spread thin. I try to just do 3 or 4 main trips a season and try to fit in another one if I can. But I learned that it becomes really impossible and kind of stressful whenever you book 7 to 8 hunts. That's almost just too many. You just can't hit all those places at one time. And
Yeah,
uh, you kind of need a good 4 to 7 days in one place, maybe even longer, before you have some success.
sure. I mean, there's a lot of uncontrollable variables,
A lot of variables.
that can certainly influence it one way or the other. So yeah, it's hard to just say, hey, I'm gonna go there for the weekend and hope for the best. Um,
Yeah. you can't kind of rely on that. I mean, I try not to go anywhere unless I got at least 4 to 5 days to hunt. It's really kind of hard to just say, hey, I'm going to go in here for 2 days. Hopefully it works out. Very rarely does it work out. Even if you have something showing up consistent on camera, man, you just kind of need that extra time just built in. Just not to feel so pressed from, hey, I got to go kill a deer here I got 2 days to hunt, then I got to get to Missouri or go to Kansas after that. I've learned just, you got to kind of just chill and that can be a little bit stressful as well. I mean, I think kind of narrowing down just the amount of trips that I take a year has definitely taken some stress off of trying to do too much at once.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, I will come back and talk Louisiana here in just a minute. Uh,
Yeah.
I know you know where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
But I did want to another thing I wanted to bring up is I guess a very broad topic, but I had a very specific question. Social media, right? That has obviously changed a lot of things
Yeah.
with regards to the hunting industry in general. So I guess my basic question is, do you feel that it has enhanced the hunting industry, or do you feel like it's watered it down?
Hmm. That's a good question. Um, I think it's just giving consumers options. If I had to say that, like, I feel like for myself, it's just allowed me a little bit like Netflix and other apps. It's just given me it's allowed me to pick my own lane of the content that I want to consume.
Mhm.
Like for myself, I won't even say what the shows are, but I don't probably shouldn't say this, but I don't consume Outdoor Channel as much anymore. I don't even really have cable at home. All I do is the only reason why I really have cable is for the Atlanta Braves, just to watch them every night during the spring. But I have YouTube TV, and so I don't really, watch as much content on television. But I believe what social media has given me, and probably a lot of other people, is I have my 3 or 4 favorites. I also have my favorite 2 or 3 outdoor podcasts that I really like to listen to, and it's allowed me to cater to the options that I like. I have a lot, probably too many options, but it does give you the ability to go and choose like some of your favorite shows and episodes to listen to or watch, and not being forced on a certain time schedule of watching this at 7 o'clock, every Thursday night. I mean, it kind of allows you to go and listen to it or watch it when you want to.
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably been the good thing about social media. And then I think just for the next generation too, like my brother's age, there's always different influencers or content that's coming up, and that may be his generation's Michael Waddell or Chris B or whoever like that. Um, so I think it has, I don't know if watered it down is the appropriate term, but I try to look at it as a positive and just go, it's just given our space, just like a lot of other spaces, the ability to pick and choose what and who they want to watch.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, I would say, I used to think the Outdoor Channel had a lot of different shows and content, but YouTube probably has 10 times the amount of people in our space with content and shows. And I don't even hundreds, 200s worth of podcasts in our space as well. But to me, I don't think is as much of a bad thing as it is just, what you like, and you can kind of cater that to your needs or your desires.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent answer. I really do. Watered down may have been maybe too harsh of a term.
No,
Uh,
I understand that.
but like sometimes, like for my own, I guess the algorithm figures out what you're into. So
Very true.
whatever platform I'm on, it just seems like you're just overwhelmed every day with someone new it's presenting for you to follow or whatever. And it's like, man, I don't even, some of it's probably great, some of it's garbage. There's a whole lot that's in the middle. And when on earth am I ever going to have time to sort through it all? It's just
Yeah.
overwhelming.
No, that's a good point. Like, I don't think if it wasn't for probably Realtree, I wouldn't have social media to the extent that I do, because I don't really like going on there and scrolling. Like, I don't have TikTok. My wife loves TikTok, but I don't care for TikTok because I feel like just you could spend hours on there just
Yes.
scrolling, looking at stuff, and Instagram and Facebook the same way. But maybe I'm old school, but like I have a few things that I really like. I will have some things get recommended to me on the outdoor side that I maybe go and watch and listen to, and I may watch and listen to it more if I really like it. But I have a few shows and a few things I listen to that I really like, and I don't really deviate much off of some of that. Otherwise, I would just get really just bogged down just in probably the day to day algorithm, and you know, it does become really confusing and overwhelming if you spend too much time on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we get to Louisiana, I will make one comment because you said the Braves. Hey, we
Yeah,
made it to 500 last night.
I
So
know.
it's
Oh,
celebration time. I feel
man,
like we're on the right going in the right direction.
it's been stressful though to get to 500.
Yeah.
It's like every time they get to it, they just fall a game or two back, and
Yeah.
it's not like they're winning any games by a large margin either. Every game
No.
is really close and kind of stressful to watch in the eighth or ninth inning, but uh, hopefully they can still turn it around. They're still in
Yeah.
striking distance, still plenty of time in the division, but it's definitely been a rough start. It
Yeah.
hadn't been like the last few years.
Well, hopefully we can stay healthy and get a few of our key people back here pretty quick.
Yeah,
And we got a long way to go. So go
yeah,
Braves.
yeah. Go Braves. So Acuna's getting back healthy, so that's good.
That's right. That's right. All right. So let's get to Louisiana because we cannot talk to Tyler Jordan without talking about Stomper Jr. And man, what a story. What a buck. So I know when it first happened, right off the bat, everybody was anticipating it that it was going to be the state record typical for Louisiana. And I believe it was on the World Working Class Bowhunter podcast. I believe is where I heard it. Heard you say that was confirmed. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, it is.
So
Yeah.
what a
So
score. It was
yeah,
like 213 gross or something like that.
213 gross, and I want to say it was like 192 net, I believe. And I think the
92,
record was
194.
I think the record was 184
Yeah.
and some change. But yeah, kind of crazy. That obviously got a lot of social media attention, probably more than I really cared for. um, but no, it was a fun chase on that deer. I mean, we've had that lease since 2020, I think was the first year we had it. And in no way when we leased that land did I ever think we would kill any kind of record buck on there. I knew it had some really good genetics on it. And, that place was about 10,000 acres total, but probably huntable for whitetail, maybe 6 or 7,000. Obviously for honey people that know Honey Break, it's, they do a lot of waterfowl hunting down there. And so the offspring, this deer was the offspring of a deer I killed in 2020 called Stomper. And we were trying to let this deer go another year as well, but he actually developed hoof rot. And this was probably a week or two before the rut.
Oh, wow.
And he had lost a ton of weight. He had probably lost 100 pounds. I don't think that deer was going to make it another 2 or 3 weeks. I went and hunted the spot. I think it was maybe, gosh, I may have this wrong, but I think it was maybe 3 or 4 days before Christmas back in 2020. And it was during COVID too. So kind of a crazy time. And we had been down there a long time already, maybe 10 or 12 days. And I was actually not hunting Stomper. I was actually in there hunting another deer. Stomper had, at least on the camera, had never been daylight on camera. So like thought there was a chance possibly, but there was maybe one daylight photo in 3 weeks of Stomper. So it was not really anticipating him showing up. Um, so went in there and he actually showed up probably 15 minutes before dark, shot that deer, and I think that deer grossed 190. And I mean, just would have been probably a giant the following year. And then I think it was 22 that we got a picture of Stomper Jr. and just could tell that this was the offspring of Stomper, but he was still kind of non-typical. He didn't really get typical till 2023. And so he just the time length in 23 was crazy. And so just didn't really know where 24 was going to go. He was healthy. So we're just going to try to give him another year. And then obviously, I think it was we had had cameras out since September, but I think the first picture I got of Stomper Jr. was maybe November 3rd, I think was the first picture I got. So we'd had cameras out a couple of months and he had not shown up anywhere. So kind of crazy. Um, and then was actually in there bow hunting him, put up a ground blind and where he was setting up. But again, he was on camera. I think I only had one afternoon to hunt, then I had to go home. I can't remember why I had to go home. Um, but hunted that afternoon, put up the ground blind, just was going to see what happened. Well, Lord behold, like here he comes, and he by the time he got to us in bow range, it was I think 6 or 7 minutes after legal shooting light, and so wasn't going to be tempted to do anything there. Unfortunately, the deer spooked and winded us, and he didn't show up for another 2.5 weeks, but it actually moved about 2 miles from us. And I think he was maybe 5 minutes past legal shooting light 2 days before I went down there. And then the weather, we were going to have a big cold snap. And so I was like, man, we might as well just go in there. Unfortunately, there's no blind, there's no place to get, but it was going to be really windy the day I was going to hunt. It was like 25-mile-an-hour winds, which is pretty insane. But I felt good about maybe I can go in there, put up a ground blind in that wind, and maybe we'll get lucky and nothing in there will, be able to detect the ground blind or smell us while we're in there. We had a good wind when we went in. So I think we went in there at noon the day that we killed him, and he maybe showed up 20 minutes before daylight, before the last light that day. But yeah, just a deer of a lifetime. Really wish I could have done it with a bow. And he may have been regular on that spot had we not sat there and hunted it that night. But you never know. But yeah, definitely. I never thought in my life I would ever shoot a record of any kind, especially nothing like that in the Southeast, let alone Louisiana. So proud to do it and represent the South in that way. And glad we could let him grow and and that he didn't cross over to a neighbor or somebody like that beforehand. So yeah, pretty insane.
Yeah. Um, I was watching the episode on, I think it was Realtree Road Trips, last week. And, a lot of really relatable, content in that storyline, which I really enjoyed. I love the fact, the whole story about setting that blind up the day of that you were talking
Yeah,
about. That just feels like something that only us. I'm being funny here, but only us common folk have to deal with. That
yeah,
was that was a neat aspect of the story. Just kind of hearing you work through the thought process on that and using the wind to your advantage. To be able to go in there and make the noise and go through all the setup, and it was on a windy day anyway. So I thought that was absolutely magnificent.
yeah.
And I
Go
also
ahead.
note the fact that, if I followed this part correctly, I believe you got him with the same gun that you got Stomper with, didn't you?
That's correct. Yeah, it is. Same gun.
Now,
I
how
love
cool is that?
308. Yeah. Yeah, it's my favorite caliber. I love that gun, 308 Franke. So yeah, that was actually really cool. And yeah, I think, people look at that and don't get me wrong, like it's a well-managed piece. I would say that, we really have tried to do work in managing just even the does on there and the bucks that we have to take off. But there was nobody really helping us, even though it was really nice land. Honey Break does nothing really for the whitetail. They have some food plots, but like their business is waterfowl hunting. So like, they don't sell any deer hunt. So it was just kind of easy for them to like uh, just to lease the deer rights and do it to us. And again, wasn't thinking that we would ever have a chance at a caliber deer like that. I mean, we've been really blessed to have some deer in the 170s, a couple bumping 180, but didn't think we'd ever see a deer, quite like this. And just goes to show, I mean, just managing bucks and does and, trying to do the things that you can control. Not saying it was all us by any means because the genetics were there, but I do believe that, we did play a little bit of a role in just trying to, manage it as best as we could. And, have been lucky to take some really good whitetails off of it. I don't think we'll ever see something like that again, but it was cool, a deer of a lifetime for sure.
Yeah, well, congratulations again. Phenomenal buck, phenomenal story. The world is a better place, in my opinion, that you've shared all that with us. I mean, that's all I could say about that.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't know if everybody feels that way,
Well,
but I
yeah,
do appreciate you saying that. I think, that's part of me when I see social media. I'm like, it doesn't matter who you are, but, a big deer, any kind of deer like that, it's just going to get a lot of attention. And I honestly was not kind of expecting some of the, like, just the attention to go where it did. It just kind of took off, I think, days after he was killed. But, hopefully everybody knows it was, done the right way, and that I don't take anything like that for granted. Just feel really blessed and lucky to have that kind of opportunity, and proud to represent the South and Louisiana for that matter. I think it speaks volumes to the Southeast, but Louisiana as well, that we can still grow that kind of caliber deer. Here in the Southeast, it does require a lot of things to go the right way. Don't get me wrong. And, I know that's kind of an anomaly with the amount of acres that we had in place there at Honey Break, but um, still proud for the South and what we can do.
heck yeah. I mean, I spend a lot of time on this podcast, talking about Virginia and Carolina, and the kind of bucks that we have and stuff. So I can certainly relate when you talk about the pride of representing the South, and I say this all the time, man, what Iowa and Kansas and Missouri and Montana, what all them boys got going on is phenomenal. And I take absolutely nothing, I'm insanely jealous of what they've got.
Yeah,
But at the same time, I'm incredibly proud of the animals that we have in our area too. So I take every
definitely.
opportunity that I can to highlight that, So
Yeah. I would say for me, just to hit on that some, like, I've kind of, as I've gotten older, I've certainly felt this way, is I'd rather kill a 140-inch deer in Georgia than I maybe would a 170 in Kansas now.
amen.
And that's why I just have really enjoyed hunting at home a lot, is I just take a lot of pride in hunting here in the South, because I know it's not as easy as it is, and it's not easy anywhere, don't get me wrong, but it's just not as frequent as it is in other places. And so when you're able to grow something like that here, it just has more meaning being from here also. But I think that's why I've spent a lot of time here in Georgia, more so than I have traveled in a lot of years, is just because of that pride factor, of just how hard it is too, just to kill a good deer here in the Southeast. Like I said, a lot has to go right, and it does in other parts of the country as well, but you just don't see it happen as much here as you do in other places.
I agree. I agree. I kind of want to circle back a little bit to, um, you know, kind of tying in my own experience with Realtree, I guess, is where I'm going. You have a motto out there on the front of your corporate building there, uh, friends, family, and outdoors. And, for I guess the outsider looking in, you want to believe that you mean that. You want to believe that it's legitimate. But you take it with a grain of salt. Everybody's got a marketing slant on things these days, and but I guess what I'm getting at is, I guess in my judgment, I feel like I can say that it's legit, and that all started with our trip down there to the Realtree Farms last September. Man, I had no idea what to expect. I tried to keep myself grounded. I was like, we're a bunch of nobodies going down there. We're doing a doe management hunt. We're not going to meet anybody. We'll enjoy it for what it is. It's going to be cool and all that. And let me just tell you, I couldn't have been further off base. You guys completely rolled out the red carpet for us and treated us like we were superstars. And, day one, your dad comes rolling in and just talks to us like he has known us his whole life.
Oh, he'll talk.
And I mean, just spent a couple hours and just sharing stories with us, talking about Ole Miss football, talking about, the current state of affairs in college football. Just, phenomenal and just, took us out to the corporate office and gave us a tour the next day. And, there we are just hanging out. And David Blanton walks in to say hello. And again, the whole experience was just mind blowing. But to me, the biggest thing that stood out was just how real everyone was. It's Realtree, but it's real people. It's not this, we're better than you and we don't have time for you. Um, so it is, I just can't say enough good things about how down to earth and how authentic everyone has been and everyone I've met, including you at this point, it's
Yeah.
just phenomenal. So
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I'd like to think, I mean, I don't think there's anybody in here that feels like we're any different than anybody else, and I think that's even what I talked about earlier about,
yeah,
different people I've got to meet, that are quote unquote celebrities or, I feel like when you get people in a hunting camp and you've been around a hunting camp a lot of your life, like you and I both have, I think it just really that commonality, that common interest for everybody, you just realize that we're all just humans, man. We're just trying to, get from one place to the other. And, we're all the same. But I think that family atmosphere and that culture that dad is ultimately responsible for establishing in this place is just proven why he's been successful for a long time. I think if you ask any employee in here, they may lie to me and say something different, uh, I think that's why you don't see a lot of people ever really want to leave Realtree, and we haven't had a lot of turnover, and that a lot of the people that dad has came with through the years, retired at Realtree, got their start here, but never wanted to leave. Um, so I think that family culture, I mean, there's a reason why family is first in that thing. It's just because we view not just people inside of here, but just our partners and people that we do business with. My best friends in my life, and I feel like I can say this for a lot of people that work in this building, stem from this industry and these people and people that I've met. And I'd like to think we're just all one big family and just thankful. And I'm glad that you left with that impression. So
yeah, I certainly feel that it's 100% true and authentic, and it certainly makes me even more proud of our relationship as companies, that I can wear that badge with even more honor now, so to speak, if I can put it that way.
yeah, well, that's good.
And even tying that in, and just going on a side note here, but watching another one of the episode, I think it might have been this past season. I don't know. It was the one where you were hunting drop tines,
Mm,
right?
drops. Yeah, here in
Right.
Georgia, another giant deer. Yeah,
So, around at least where I am in Virginia, same as you. I mean, I've yet to see a drop tine buck on
yeah,
your farm in over 15 years. Never seen
especially
it.
double drops too.
Yeah. But the way you handled that, right? The neighbor got him.
Yeah,
And I thought the way you handled that, um, it just kind of was another testimony to who you are as a person and who y'all are as people in general. That, you weren't jealous, you weren't pissed off, like, oh man, you just ruined my show. This was going to be a
yeah,
great episode. You called the guy. I mean, it was still daylight. You could have been still hunting, and you're on the phone with the guy going, man,
yeah,
congratulations. I would love it if I could come over there and just put my hands on him. I just want to see him.
yeah,
And, I'm like, man, that is like a moth to the flame. That's just the kind of people I want to gravitate towards. That was, um, again, just made me think of it, just sitting here talking about that. But what what
yeah.
a what a great moment.
And it was a testament to Wesley too, because Wesley, who killed the deer, I mean, he could have been just the opposite way of hey man, I want to come over there and see the deer. It could have been like, no, I don't want you to see the deer. You know, I
Right.
want to do whatever. And, he was kind enough to let us come over there and film it. I think he had heard, I didn't know he was actually hunting the deer. I actually found out, I think maybe a day before that he had seen this deer on camera and he had told somebody, and I'd never met Wesley. And, I've just always been of the mindset where I have seen people in the 90s, 2000s, whether they were associated with Realtree or they knew somebody that knew us, where a big deer like that would just ruin their lives and just ruin their whole season if, it was killed out from under them or if they felt like it was out from under them. And I never wanted to be that way. I don't, it's a deer at the end of the day. And I'm going to be happy, for whoever, is able to get them if it's not me. I just don't think that's a way to live because I've seen it make a lot of people miserable. And to me, it's just not worth it at the end of the day. I put in a lot of time for that deer, sure, but there's been times where I've lucked out, and just had a deer come cruising by that maybe somebody else was hunting. So, that's just part of it. And it's not going to be the last time that happens either, with myself or anybody. That's just part of the hunting experience. And anybody that's hunted long enough knows and has probably had that happen to them at some point.
Yeah.
Uh, so it was all good. And Wesley is actually somebody now that I call a good friend.
Well,
And
excellent.
so to me, that's just kind of what it's all about is that experience has formed a friendship, between both of us. And, he came and hunted with us last year on the farm. So
Excellent.
it's just, it's cool that, we were able to, where in some cases, maybe people would, turn that into a negative, but we could turn it into a positive, hopefully for the whole industry. But, certainly not why I did it. I was genuinely happy for the guy. It was the biggest deer he's ever seen. He's hunted across the road from us, I think, for maybe 10 years and had never seen anything like that before. So I was really
Awesome.
happy for him and he was very appreciative of it as well. So it
Well,
was good.
that's awesome. Well, Tyler, I guess I want to wrap it up with one question that I sometimes forget to ask, but I generally like to ask everybody. If you could, or if you only had, I guess, one weapon going after one species
Yeah.
in one area, state,
Yeah.
whatever, how you want to do it, what would you choose and why?
Yeah. Mine's been kind of the same answer every time. And it's actually going to be with a bow and it's going to be in Alberta and Grand Prairie to be exact. But it's mule deer, spot and stalk mule deer. Early September is when it opens. They're still in velvet. And I've killed only two mule deer out there. Um, and then I went another time and was not successful, but that is the most fun I've ever had. It's just that spot and stalk, play in the wind. You're on the ground. You're not in a tree stand. Obviously, grown up in a tree stand pretty much, or in a tree or a platform my whole life for deer. And so to do that, spot and stalk, sometimes sit there and wait 3 or 4 hours to get a shot. Um, but I think you got to go through it. It just kind of teaches you a little bit of woodsmanship in a way, and just
Yeah.
how to be really sneaky. Because on days where the wind isn't blowing hard, you got to be real methodical in your approach and thoughtful about how you're going to get 40, 50 yards from a mule deer.
Man, I've often thought about, when I see, folks do that, trying to think back to like in the Southeast and the kind of woodlands we have, and you think to yourself, man, that would just be impossible. How could we ever do that? And then you think about, well, a couple hundred years ago, that's exactly what they did, you know?
That's exactly right.
But man, what a challenge. What
It,
a,
it is. And like I've killed, which you try to get a lot closer, but both the mule deer I've shot have been at 70 plus yards. And that's definitely the furthest and I've ever shot any animal. But you got to go into it with that mindset. And the guy told me before I went, he's like, you really need to practice at 90 to 100 yards. Not that you would shoot 90 or 100,
right.
but more than likely you're going to be between that 50 and 70 mark. And I was like, golly, I don't know if I can do that. But, mule deer give you a little bit more time than a whitetail, when you release an arrow. So, um, but that's just, I mean, to this day, like those are just some of my best memories going up there and just really learning about how you get close to one. And, you really go through about out of 10 setups, you may go through 8 that are not successful before you get an opportunity on your 9th or your 10th. So um, it's a different way of hunting.
Absolutely. Well, it takes an incredible amount of patience, obviously,
Yeah.
and you are very good at that. You have showed an incredible amount of patience with me today. I appreciate you, taking time out of your busy schedule to get on with me today. It means the world. And again, I can't say enough good things about the Realtree family, and I'm glad I'm awful proud to be a very small part of it. And hopefully, since the hurricane kind of ran us out early, there's rumor that we might get to come back down there in September. So
Nice.
hopefully I'll get to officially meet you this time if you're not on one of your trips. But
Definitely. Yeah, I plan on being, I don't have any moose hunts or elk hunts that I drew for this year, so I will be there. And then I'd love to come up there and try to join you on a turkey hunt in Virginia sometime.
awesome, man.
That'd be
You're
fun as well.
100% invited.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I may take you up on it.
You got it, buddy. Well, I appreciate it, Tyler. Thanks again.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.